This program is a paid commercial announcement from Jacob Media Partners and does not reflect the views of WPHT or its management. Today's program is pre-recorded.
Jacob Media Partners presents The Adam Malamut Show. Real people, real perspectives, real opinion. Presented by the law offices of Adam Malamut Associates. Powered by InjuredWorkers.com. And driven by Jaguar Land Rover Westchester. Now, live from the Malamut Associate Law Studios, The Adam Malamut Show. Hosted by Adam Malamut.
And a good evening, everyone, and welcome in to the Adam Malamut Show as we come to you on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Adam, I'm excited to come together and deliver another great show for the Delaware Valley. The last show that you did with Mark provided a tremendous amount of information that the listening audience reacted to, and they could use more so than ever before, my friend. A good legal friend is a necessity.
That's right, Krause, and it's great to be back. Happy end of August.
Oh, my God, it's crazy.
The summer's flown by. Unfortunately for a lot of the children attending school, it sounds like they're going to get an extended summer. Hopefully people are able to normalize sooner than later. It is exciting to be back. Today we've got Mark Natale back as a guest again. I have to stop calling Mark a guest because this is quickly becoming the Mark and Adam show. But I love it. We get a great dialogue going every single show.
We do, and we're talking about great and important topics.
That's right. So, to Krause's point in his opening remark, our last show prompted a call to action. We had listeners from all over New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Our listeners on radio.com had phoned in, had reached out to us on our social media through our website and asked questions. We encourage that. Throughout this show, we'll make sure that we provide our contact information so you can reach out, and it costs you nothing. We don't charge for consultations. We don't charge for phone calls. Reach out if you have a question. Today's show, and before I get into the show, I've got some things I want to talk about, but today's show is going to talk about occupational, in Pennsylvania they call them repetitive motion, workers' compensation claims, and how those types of claims oftentimes dovetail in with employment law in terms of disability, perceived disability, age discrimination. So for you out there that have been working your entire lives to support your family, and you may have been doing something that results in back pain every day, knee pain every day, shoulder pain every day, that's job related. We represent a lot of painters. We've had people from the Painters Union who have been rolling ceilings, and from their neck being juxtaposed and looking up at the ceiling, they've ended up with chronic spine issues in the cervical region in the neck. So we're going to talk about that and the interplay with employment law. But before we get into that, we're at a very interesting time in our country. We had a show where we talked about not just Black Lives Matter, but systemic racism, which in my feeling extends well beyond the color of skin. It extends to nationality, place of origin. I think that racism is a huge issue in America that has been largely ignored and not discussed. We're going to talk a little bit about how this country now, more than ever, needs your attention. The electeds, everybody likes to complain about the electoral process. Very few people participate. Everybody likes to get on their social media and give their own commentary, but very few people work to affect the change. You have an opportunity to work to affect the change. November 3rd, if you're not happy with how our government is functioning, if you're not happy with our leadership, you have an opportunity to make a change. I had a discussion with somebody earlier this week, Mark, who told me that he didn't think he was going to vote. He was concerned about not knowing who to vote for, and he just may opt out. And I had what I thought was an academic conversation with him, but now is not the time to disengage. If you're not happy, you may not like any of the candidates. And I'm not talking about just the president. I'm talking about any of the local or regional candidates, state candidates. You may not like them, but there's that saying that there's the lesser of evils. People need to vote, right? We need to drive people to the polls.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, you never don't have an interest in an election. It's always something that can affect your life and can affect your livelihood and your family. And I think in a way that it relates intimately with the topic we're discussing today, we don't talk enough about how the election impacts the courts for everyday people. I think the courts become a politicized issue, and I think conservatives do a better job of mobilizing votes for the courts, but they do it all for issues like that they care about, like guns, whatever the big social issues of the day are. But we don't talk enough about how courts impact regular working class people in their careers and in their livelihoods. I had an exchange. I responded to a Vox reporter on Twitter who asked, are trial lawyers still a big part of the Democratic Party? Are trial lawyers still in the political process? I feel like it's died down. And I said, of course we are. I said, we are because when you put aside all of the political issues that you might argue about with your family, that you might get upset about when you watch the news, the one that lawyers that do what Adam and I do, representing working people in courts, what matters the most is that our clients, working men and women of our country, have access to justice. That when they get in the courtroom, they have a fair shot at advancing their rights. And what never gets talked about is that there's one party that consistently appoints judges that are going to have the rights of big business and corporations, and there's another party that focuses on judges that are more well-rounded and more likely to give employees and injured workers a fair shot. And that is why you see trial lawyers rallying behind the Biden campaign. That is why trial lawyers will always be active in all level of politics, because we know what it's like to be an everyday person and walking in the courtroom and having to fight corporate interests. And we want to make sure that our clients have a fair shot.
That's right. And, people don't need judges until they need a judge. And until you get injured, until you're discriminated against, until you fall into a position like Steve Bannon did this past week where you get charged criminally, it doesn't matter to you who the judges are. It doesn't matter to you how the judges get there, because it's not something you deal with in your daily life. I guarantee you that today, Steve Bannon's really concerned as to what type of judge he has. And I'm pretty sure he wants a judge that's going to be a little bit more liberal.
Absolutely. For too many people, the judiciary is something they read about a couple times at the end of the Supreme Court term. But when you have a case, when you're injured at work, and when you need your rights and you need those benefits, that judge becomes a part of your daily life.
That's right. And, before we go into break, I promised that we were going to give you information and we were going to give you accessibility to more information. If you're listening, if you're following us on social media, you can reach out to us, 877-567-5293. That's 877-567-5293. Or visit us at www.malamutlaw.com, MALAMUTLAW.com. We have people available 24/7 to talk to you.
We'll get to a commercial break. On the other side, Adam and Mark will pick up the conversation. Mark, I'll come to you after the break for your Twitter handle. You mentioned Twitter. I do want to tell the listening audience, if they want to connect with Adam, he's a great follow. You'll get him on Twitter at Adam S. Malamut, ESQ, and also on Instagram at attorney_Adam_Malamut. Back in a moment.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Adam Malamut Show. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Hopefully everybody's enjoying a beautiful weather weekend towards the end of August. With Labor Day coming as late as it possibly can this year, we are getting an opportunity to stretch the summer out. So hopefully you're enjoying a safe, relaxing, and social time with your loved ones and your friends. So coming right back to where we left off in the last segment, Mark, we're talking about the importance of November 3rd and the importance of judges and the dovetail with the justice system. And the justice system includes a lot more than criminal justice. It includes the rights of working people, the rights of litigants in every sense of the word. But today we're going to talk about occupational workers' compensation claims and employment law. So an occupational workers' compensation claim, or in Pennsylvania, they often use the term repetitive motion claims. I'll give you some examples. We've represented hairstylists who have had shoulder surgeries as a result of the repetitive motion of using a scissors to go across somebody's hair. And thankfully, we're on the radio and not television, so nobody sees me actually in studio demonstrating. I think that I'd be critiqued for my form. There are a number of truck drivers that we represent who end up with shoulder, knee, and back injuries as a result of lifting heavy things off of their trucks, whether they have a lift gate or not. But the amount of weight that they bear on their joints, even though they sometimes have and usually have mechanical things like carts or pallet jacks or other things to assist them, they're physically wearing their work. These are compensable claims, and people don't often realize that. In New Jersey, occupational claims are recognized by the court as a compensable claim. It's something that you're eligible to receive temporary wage benefit for, medical benefit for, and permanency award. So those are the three different types of benefits in New Jersey that you can receive. Pennsylvania has similar benefits. And again, I'll give you my normal disclaimer, which is that each state has different laws, and you should contact us. Don't take what I'm giving you as specific legal advice to your case, but you should contact us. This is basically frame of reference conversation, just to give you the opportunity to know that there are benefits to which you're entitled that you may not be aware. But Pennsylvania's laws also provide for compensation for these types of claims. And what is most interesting is the occupational claims more often lend themselves to employment law claims and discrimination, because it is usually workers who have been on the job longer. By very nature of the occupational claim, you have a wear and tear on the body, and being significantly older than Mark, I can tell you that that's going to happen no matter what. But so many of our hardworking clients, are in the building trades, and the wear and tear that they put on their bodies is far different than the wear and tear that we put on our bodies getting in and out of our desk chairs.
One thing, Adam, I was thinking about when you referenced the truck drivers, to me, I think they work through the pain and they keep driving.
They have to, Krause, and the reason they have to is because they have families to support, and their employers don't want to hear that they're not well. Their employers don't want to hear that they can't take a load from one depot to another depot. Their employers want to know that they're making X amount of dollars per truckload that moves. And listen, our clients are some of the bravest people out there in the sense of fighting through pain, fighting through things that, guys like us, and I'll include all of us in this room, may otherwise say, I'll take a day on the couch. But hardworking people who are out there every single day in the trenches, whether it's people from the building trades or people driving trucks or whatever it is, law enforcement who may have a long beat to walk, whatever it is, these people are continually beating on their body. And I guess this is where we should have Dr. McCabe, our chiropractor, on and talk to him about maintenance and body maintenance. But that falls into another issue, which is how many of us, I don't want to say have the time, but realize that we need to make the time to maintain. So if we're not taking care of ourselves, and if we're out there digging trenches, driving trucks, walking beats, whatever your job is, swinging a hammer, whatever your job is, painting ceilings, you're putting wear and tear on your body. And your employer at the end, unfortunately, is ingrained to look at it and say, well, when Mark is done and can no longer roll the ceilings, I'll have somebody else roll the ceilings. But we need to be our own advocates. And the message that I want to get across to you, and I'm hoping that you'll take advantage of reaching out and calling us, no matter what state you're in. If we're not licensed in your state, we'll find you somebody in your state. The message I want to get to you is you have rights. You have specific rights. And I started talking about when you have these claims, it's normally somebody who is a little bit older. I don't want to say advanced in age because that makes you sound like a senior citizen who is not, potentially in the end of their working career. Oftentimes it's people in the middle of their working career. So when I say a little older, it's not somebody who's necessarily 25 years old, but you might be 40 or 45 years old. And there, by the way, there is no age limit on these claims. I'm just giving you a frame of reference. There usually comes employment protections with that. So before we get to Mark, and I'm going to go to Mark right now, but before we get to him, I want to remind you, reach out to us, call us, 877-567-5293, 877-567-5293. We have people available to take your information, and an attorney will get back to you very quickly. You can also visit us for live chat at malamutlaw.com. Mark, what's your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I think an easy way to explain to people what their rights are is to kind of explain the process that they're going to go through when they visit us at malamutlaw.com or call us. Because like you said, they're going to talk to someone and an attorney is going to get back to them right away. And the first thing we're going to decide is what sort of workers' compensation benefits they're entitled to. And these occupational injuries, like you said, run through the litany of benefits there. But then the referral will get to me, and that's when I'll start analyzing what they have from an employment law perspective. And there's a couple different things I'm looking at. First off, whether it's an occupational claim, whether it's a single event incident, whatever caused your work-related injury, if you have to file a workers' comp claim, you should know that you're protected, that you can't be retaliated against. And occupational injuries are no different from that. A lot of people feel that, if it wasn't some freak accident, that maybe they don't have the same rights, maybe they don't have the same protections. No. If you try to get workers' compensation claim benefits, whether you're in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, you're protected from retaliation and wrongful termination.
And Mark, I do think that people are afraid of losing their job if they raise the question.
Exactly. And I think that fear is heightened in these sort of claims because people start thinking, they start thinking negative about themselves. They start thinking about what their employer is going to say. Oh, you're breaking down. Oh, you can't hang anymore. Oh, you can't do this. That's not what these claims are about. These claims are about people that have worked hard for a long period of time to provide for themselves and their family, and now they deserve benefits. And in my case, a lot of times they deserve what's called a reasonable accommodation. Because what you see with these occupational injuries is the need for light duty, the need for modified duty. And the first question I'm going to be asking is, I'm going to be asking about your job duties. I'm going to be asking about what you do on a day-to-day basis. And I'm going to be asking about, what could we take off of your plate? What could we do to change your job? Adam referenced truck drivers. And, I've had truck drivers call me and say, well, I don't know what I could change. I have to unload, my truck. I have to load it back up. And then in talking to them, I find out, no, actually there are routes where, all they're doing is driving and dumping a load at a particular location. They don't have to do the lifting. Well, why aren't those routes dedicated to employees that need light duty, that have these occupational injuries? I have someone who had the need for light duty. He'd been driving trucks for a long time, and we represent him now. And he told me about how, they really needed dispatchers, and I dispatched for 10 years, and they really needed someone who could work on the yard moving the trucks, and I've done that for a long time. But instead of modifying his duty, they terminated him. What is beautiful about the ADA is, for so long people go through their careers and they feel they have no bargaining power, they're just there to work, punch a clock. The ADA puts the ball in their hands and lets them put an obligation to their employer and say, hey, I want to keep working. I want to keep providing for you. I want to keep providing for my family. But I need a hand here. And a lot of employees don't realize that they can do that.
We use a lot of acronyms, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you to talk to the audience about the ADA and what the ADA is, what it means. I want to remind you, we're here to talk to you, 877-567-5293. That's 877-567-5293. And you can visit us at malamutlaw.com, MALAMUTLAW.com. When we come back, we're going to talk about the different acronyms that are used, the ADA, SEPA, LAD, FMLA, FLSA. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about all of these, and we're also going to talk about corporate influence and really, corporate conscious making, the way that corporations can create this sense of obligation on you to not avail yourself of your rights. We'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, and a lot to talk about, too. I do want to remind the listening audience, if you miss any of the broadcast, you can go to radio.com, search Adam Malamut, The Adam Malamut Show, and you can download that podcast. You'll also get it on the Malamut website. Back in a moment.
From the Malamut Associates Law Studios, this is the Adam Malamut Show.
Thank you for tuning in to the Adam Malamut Show. I'm here with Mark Natale, and we are talking about occupational claims and employment law. One of the things that we were talking about on break is corporate guilt. I was searching at the end of the last segment to try to figure out how I can explain this concept of corporate guilt. And I liken it to mother's guilt. It's a guilt that you don't want to disappoint. You don't want to potentially offend somebody that you believe is in your corner. Here's the problem. If you're injured and your employer isn't availing you of the benefits to which you have rights, to which they pay for, they're not in your corner. And this is something that you have to keep in mind. And this isn't to tell you to be angry at your employer. This isn't, you can only control what you can control. And if you have the ability to get treatment, to get temporary wage benefits, so while you're getting treatment, you can feed your family, and to potentially get a permanency award, as you erode your body working for the benefit of somebody else's wealth, it's up to you to get that treatment to take care of yourself, because your work years will hopefully end one day that will give you the opportunity to have a life after your career. We call them the golden years. You want to preserve yourself so those golden years are meaningful. And if you allow the corporate guilt to come into play in your mind where you say, well, I don't want to sue my employer. I don't want to file a claim against my employer. I'm going to tell you, I think you're foolish. It's honorable that you feel that sense of dedication, that sense of commitment to your employer. And there's nothing foolish about that. That to me is a tenet of great character. What is foolish is the fact that you're ignoring your body and the needs of your body, which really should come over everybody else. It should come over the employer. It should come over everything else, because you can't take care of yourself and your family if you're not healthy. So before I flip it back to Mark, I want to remind you, we will talk to you about whether you have an occupational claim or a specific injury claim. You may have gotten injured and just not pursued a claim. We will talk to you about these claims. We will talk to you about whether you're being mistreated at work. 877-567-5293, or visit us at malamutlaw.com, MALAMUTLAW.com. Mark, we started talking about the ADA, FLSA, FMLA. We can make people's heads spin with all of these acronyms. And I don't see a need on this particular show to get into all of the various acronyms in employment law, but the ones that are relevant to this particular topic, educate the audience.
Yep, absolutely. And educating the audience is such a big part of what we do, and it's so important. At the break, Krause and I were talking about how, if we had 100 people in the room that were injured at work, how many of them wouldn't even know their rights, wouldn't even know what they could do, and how many of them, as you mentioned, would be filled with this corporate guilt and feel like they couldn't go forward, that they couldn't step up. And that's such a big problem because they're really one and the same. I mean, you have corporations that try to push a team-first atmosphere that say, you have to be willing to sacrifice and work hard. And, well, that is really a one-sided bargain because they're asking that of their employees but not necessarily of themselves. And then you also have just the negative connotation that they put to everyone that comes forward. And what that creates is a workforce that is never given the information they need and is scared to step forward about it. So what I want to do is just break down really quickly what rights you have if you're injured. First, like I said, first front of attack is workers' compensation. That every employee, if you have injury that's caused either occupationally or specific incident, if it came at work, you have a right to pursue workers' compensation benefits. Then there is a myriad of state and federal employment laws. And one of the things we pride ourselves on doing is doing everything we can, leaving no stone unturned to find an employment law that protects you in your particular situation. In these cases, a lot of times we're talking about the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that has state law claims under the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act and the New Jersey law against discrimination. Now, a lot of times you have employees that have these occupational injuries and they say, I'm not disabled. Are you kidding me? I've been doing this job for 30 years. I'm vibrant. I have an active life with my family. My back is just bothering me. My shoulders are just bothering me. You should know that the definition of disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act does not mean you're crippled, does not mean you're not able to live your life, but it means you have a major life activity, walking, running, lifting, carrying, that is inhibited by your injury. And when people realize that, they realize, oh, wait, I do have a disability that qualifies under law. I do have these protections. A lot of times, too, we're also talking about the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, and there are various other leave acts in state law that implies as well. And what those do is, a lot of times, one of the basic things people need is just time off. And they get the pressure from their job. You can't take the time off. You can't have, 2 days off every month. You can't take off the 3 weeks that you need for your injury to heal. Well, you have rights for that. You have rights under the FMLA. You have rights under state leave act laws. And even if you don't qualify for leave, you could get leave under the Americans with Disabilities Act as a reasonable accommodation. We talk a lot about the Fair Labor Standards Act. This is when a lot of times people don't call us until they have an injury, and then all of a sudden they slip in there, oh, and by the way, I've never been paid right for years. And this goes back into corporate guilt, that for so long they just never spoke up. They were pressured never to say anything about it, to just be quote-unquote grateful for whatever their employer did for them, and they don't speak up and talk about the wage violations that happen until they have an injury, until something happens that gets them to a lawyer. Adam, I explained this to someone recently who I was talking about this. I said, and I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit now, but you got me fired up, that they are not just pursuing their case against their employer. They're pursuing their case against decades and billions of dollars of corporate propaganda that tries to create a workforce that either doesn't know about their rights or feels guilty for asserting their rights. That's why we have so many clients call us and say, I'm not the type of person to sue. I'm not the type of person to get a lawyer, as if it's a bad thing. It's not. We've had decades of activists, of legislators, of people who have fought for these rights, and you should feel entitled to exercise them and entitled to explore them when something happens at work.
That's exactly right. The fact that corporate guilt sinks in on folks, the fact that people take ownership of corporate guilt is something that is a challenge for us every day. I met with a client this past week who was driving for work, was involved in a terrible accident, significant property damage, and he didn't want to sue his company. And the accident was not his fault. It wasn't his company's fault, but he was on the clock. And I had to explain to him that he's not suing his company. Workers' compensation insurance is required by law. Every employer must have workers' compensation insurance. By the way, if you get injured and your employer doesn't have workers' compensation insurance, we can help you with that also. In New Jersey, it's criminal. But you're obligated as an employer to have workers' compensation insurance. And the particular client, without getting into the details of his case, was injured. Workers' comp was notified, but he really didn't want to sue his employer. And I had to explain to him, you're not suing your employer. When an accident happens, your employer pays for this insurance, and it covers the claim. You're not going to be taking your boss's deposition. You're not going to be dragging them through the mud, through court. There's insurance that covers it. And insurance is a word that we're not supposed to say in court, but guess what? We're not in court, so I'm going to say insurance, insurance, insurance all over the radio, because you should know they like to take your money. They don't want to pay the claims. Don't hesitate to reach out and to talk to us about your rights. In this particular case, the workers' compensation insurance carrier, the employer's insurance, will get repaid by the person who caused the accident. And once I took the time to explain it to him, he felt very comfortable. He's pursuing his claim, and he should. He's injured. He's badly injured. So he was going to forego pursuing a claim to the benefit of his employer, but his employer had no interest in doing anything to help him out.
It goes back to really how we even opened the show. We have so many people that would say, oh, well, I'm not political. I'm not someone that would get a lawyer. I'm not someone that would cause a big fight over this. Well, you know what? Your employer is political. The insurance industry is political. The insurance company that your company's been paying into, they're willing to get a lawyer. They're willing to cause a fight. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get an economic advantage over you. And just because they'll turn around and preach some team atmosphere or, do this for the company, do that, know that the moment things change, they will be the first ones to get political, to go to court, to bring a fight. And you're only doing what you are completely entitled to do by standing up, seeing what benefits that you have, and seeing what you can do to advance your rights in court.
I think it's personal guilt in addition to accepting corporate guilt, Adam. I really do. I think people individually feel bad about protecting themselves. Is that a weird statement? I think that's true.
Krause, 100%. We're wired to protect others, but not to protect ourselves. I will tell you that in almost every case, we have people, good people are genuinely worried about hurting other people. And their concern is that they're going to hurt somebody else. Their concern is also that they don't know the process. That's what we're here for. So before we go to break, let me remind you, we're here to talk to you. We're here to answer your questions. It doesn't cost you anything. 877-567-5293. You can also reach us at malamutlaw.com. I hope you're enjoying tonight's show. We're going to come back and have a strong fourth segment and give you some kind of stronger details as to ways this can impact your life, not just now, but down the road. If you're injured, if you're not availing yourself of the opportunity to get treatment and seek help. So again, 877-567-5293. We hope to hear from you. We'll be back in a minute.
Real people, real perspectives, real opinion. Now back to Adam Malamut.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Adam Malamut Show. Real people, real perspectives, real opinion right here on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT. And I want to remind the listening audience all week long on 1210 WPHT, during the Rich Zeoli Show, during Dom Giordano's show, they broadcast from the Malamut Associates Law Studio. Adam Malamut, as he delivers the show to you tonight, is sincere. give him a call. There's no charge for the conversation. If you have a question, reach out, call Adam. I can vouch for him being a good guy. I can vouch for him loving the Jersey Shore and loving Ocean City, and I can also vouch for him just being a great fan, but also a good human being. Adam, back to you, sir.
Thanks, Krause. By the way, that was a paid endorsement.
Yeah, right. Thanks for the coffee this morning. Appreciate it.
You got it, man. Listen, my dad always said a bad cup of coffee after a long time becomes a good cup of coffee as long as you keep it consistent.
Yeah, good stuff.
So you're used to drinking our bad stuff. Listen, it's a hot topic. November 3rd, we have an important decision to make. Who's going to be leading us? That decision, and just to give you an idea as to the tree of decision making, that decision affects who's going to be on the bench. Who's going to be on the bench affects the case law and the way cases are decided. The way those cases are decided trickles down and affects each and every single one of us. And each and every single one of us don't really care about who's on the bench until we care about who's on the bench. And I opened up the show talking about Steve Bannon, I'm sure, is begging to get a liberal judge right now. There are a lot of judges out there who will, look, judges are human. A lot of judges will put their own political belief and slant into interpretation of the law as it applies to the facts of your case. Each and every one of you should be concerned. If you're one injury away from needing somebody to hopefully rule in your favor on whatever the issue may be, and occupational claims are one of those issues. So one of the greatest challenges that we see in occupational claims is the argument that the injury didn't happen as a result of the job. Judges decide this. Judges decide this through your testimony, which, will be competent and credible, through expert testimony, which will be competent and credible, and through the testimony of the employer or the employer's representatives who have one interest, and that's to make sure that they don't have to pay more money. It's very important, if you are injured at work, if you believe that you've suffered an injury as a result of the type of work you do, to reach out to us. I told you I'd keep giving you opportunities to know how to contact us. 877-567-5293. And I'll do it a couple more times if you don't have a pen and paper in your hand. Or you can visit us at malamutlaw.com and check out our website. We have a live chat feature there 24/7. We're always happy to hear from people. So as we talk about injuries and we talk about the way people get treated when they're injured, one of the things that we see most frequently is people getting rushed back to work. In Pennsylvania, the way that the workers' compensation system is handled medically is different than in New Jersey. In New Jersey, you have no choice but to go to the doctor chosen by your employer, which is a completely archaic system. And I know that the legislature is visiting that issue. In Pennsylvania, you have some choice of your medical providers. In New Jersey, you go to the doctor, you're oftentimes rushed back to work and placed in a job that either you're not ready to do, you can't do, or maybe a step backwards from what you're qualified to do. Mark, how do those things resonate in employment law?
It all goes back to those words that we repeat a lot, which is reasonable accommodation. Leave of absence, time away from work, light duty requirements, they're all what's considered reasonable accommodations under the law. And the employer is required to engage in what's called the interactive process to try to find a reasonable accommodation that works for you and isn't overly burdensome on them. And a lot of times when employers try to rush you to work, they pressure employees so that employees then go back to their doctors and say, hey, lift my light duty requirements. They pressure employees to make them say, tell their doctors, hey, clear me to go back to work. what they're doing is they're failing to properly engage in the interactive process to say, okay, actually we could make it work if this injured employee got an extra week off, or we could make it work if this injured employee got another month of light duty, but we don't want to do that. We could make more money off of them if we don't do that, so we're going to pressure them instead to get off of this medical treatment that they're getting. That is an ADA violation, and that's something that we see a lot in our reasonable accommodation cases. And Adam, I did want to touch on one other thing that you just mentioned, which was a lot of times people are concerned whether or not you can prove that the injury is job-related. And that is really the ultimate test for workers' compensation, especially when it comes to occupational injury claims. Injuries that might have been developed over years, maybe you had multiple employers, there's a process in workers' compensation to still prove that that's job-related. The important thing to remember is in the Americans for Disabilities Act, your injury does not have to be job-related. We have clients that we represent under the ADA for cancer, for genetic heart disease, for multiple sclerosis, any medical condition that... COVID, yes. We have people under the ADA we're representing that have a pre-existing condition that makes him at risk for COVID. It does not have to be job-related to have protection under the ADA. So if you think you have one of these occupational injuries, the reason why it benefits you to contact a firm like ours that is handling it both from a workers' compensation and an employment law perspective is because we're going to have a team of attorneys that evaluates your case, that evaluates the medical information that you have, and we're going to find out what the best avenue for you is. Sometimes that's just workers' compensation. Sometimes that's just an employment law claim under the ADA or FMLA. Sometimes, and a lot of times, what we're able to do more and more is we're able to fight for you on both fronts, and we're able to bring both a workers' compensation action and an employment law action. So it's important to get in touch with us. MalamutLaw.com. Adam said it's 24/7. You can get a live chat. Krause was asking me over the break to give my Twitter account. If you want to know where my head's at, my Twitter handle is at NJ Employee Law. It's NJ Employee Law. If you don't mind Philly sports and some legal analysis, feel free to follow me.
I love it.
Listen, Philly sports, I think that's a given. In this market, you're just going to have to bear and grin it if you're not a fan of Philadelphia. So while I'm watching my 76ers go down in flames, but there's always next season.
Heartbreaking.
It is. So
We'll talk about the process on another show.
I've got a process.
We're going to book a double show for that.
Yeah.
I've got a process.
Double show.
So corporate guilt. Krause talked about individual guilt, corporate guilt. I use the analogy all the time of when you're on an airplane, the instructions from the flight attendant are, if the airbags were to drop, use the oxygen on yourself before you help others. That applies to your injuries, your health, your body. I'm hoping that you enjoyed the show. I'm hoping you got a lot of information out of us. Again, I'm hoping you will get in contact with us. You may have viable claims that you're not aware of. Get in contact with us. Let us help you. Let us talk you through it. 877-567-5293. Adam Malamut at malamutlaw.com. Visit us at malamutlaw.com. You've listened to the Adam Malamut Show. Hopefully you've listened more than once, but I can tell you that every week we bring back important topics. This is a topic that, in my mind, hits every single one of our listeners. So everybody knows somebody who's working hard and comes home sore at the end of the day. And I'm not saying that soreness rises to the level of a claim, but again, we want to see you take care of your body and your health. So in the future, we'll have Dr. Charles McCabe from Reach Wellness come on. He'll talk about health maintenance. But for now, we're going to sign off. I want to thank you for joining us again. I hope you all remain socially distant, wear your mask, stay healthy, and best wishes for a great week ahead. I'm Adam Malamut. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Adam Malamut Show, a Jacob Media production. If you're interested in learning more about the power of the radio hour, contact Joe Krause at 267-261-3428.
This program is a paid commercial announcement and does not reflect the views of WPHT or its management. Today's program has been pre-recorded.